Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, Valentine's Day is right around the corner, even more so by the time this video actually goes up. It's actually like Valentine's Day is actually like 2 weeks away at the time of me recording this. So, but regardless, because of that, I'm going to do another favorite fictional couples video. This being a video where I talk about some of my favorite fictional couples. These are not in any particular order. First on my list is Rean and Alisa from Trails of Cold Steel. Because why? Because I am obsessed with Trails of Cold Steel. You know, I make any excuse to bring those games up whenever I can. But the reason why Rean and Alisa are very interesting in many different regards, because technically they're not a official couple, because if you're unaware, this is like a Persona game, and if you're unaware, what I mean by that is like there is no canonical couple. Like the main character can get close to anyone, but there's no like official canon couple. But to me, Rean and Alisa are the closest you can get to canon, because you know, obviously, like you spend your bonding moments with characters in Trails of Cold Steel and you get close to them. Well, Rean and Alisa have a lot more intimate moments, not just within their bonding events that happens anyway, but also like just in the confines of the story. So they have the most intimate relationship out of anyone, especially like anytime they get reunited over the course of the series, like them hugging and everything. Like, especially when they reunite in 2 and 3, you know, everyone's just like, whoa, that embrace, that hug. It's like, whoa, you know, and just, they're so adorable, especially when you think about where they first met at Thor's. Well, the first interaction was good, and then there was the whole, oh, they ended up, you know, in the basement of the old schoolhouse, and that whole circumstance. I mean, granted, they eventually fixed that. Like, it was just this awkward thing of like Rean not being able to find an opportunity to apologize, and Alisa feeling like, oh, I messed up and kind of pulled the trigger on that. But like, they have that relationship where it's like she'll be like, oh really, she'll kind of dart her eyes and kind of think a little the worst of him on occasions. But they do have the most like I said, intimate moments of just them bonding, and you know, the moment they had in Nord together, you know, they're there for each other. Because I also talked about this, they had this thing in Trails of Cold Steel 4, like when you beat the battle with like a link attack between them, or maybe, you know, through a rush. If you've never played the games, that might not mean anything to you, but like the win quote is like Rean holding out his hand being like, thanks for always being there for me, Alisa. And then she says, of course, Rean, anything for you, and lays her hand on top of his. And I'm like, to me, that's just like the most adorable thing ever. I love it. And also more aspects about it, and this is something you learn through their bonding events in 2, that Rean and Alisa actually met when they were little. Like, she came to Ymir, and basically Alisa kind of got separated from her family, and she was crying and she was sad, and Rean built her like a little snow bunny. And like, obviously she didn't remember it at the time, but it's like through the like early bonding events, she's like, because she remembers meeting someone, she's like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if we actually met all those years ago when I actually came to Ymir? And then she remembers, she's like, holy crap, that boy that helped me out, that was you. Oh my god, we actually have met before. So it just adds this element to their story even more, that it kind of runs deep like that. So it's just like just who their personalities, and just what, you know, like I said, their intimate moments with each other. It just, especially because like Alisa kind of pulls away a little bit in 4, and I think that just kind of plays very nicely into like their love story a little bit. So like I said, it's a situation where everyone's got their number one waifu when it comes to that situation. It's just, for me, I mean, I'm always, you know, who they always kind of naturally put together is Alisa and Rean, in my opinion. So that kind of makes it a lot more canonical than any other relationship. But once again, everyone's got their special waifu, so their relationship is always going to be different, canonically speaking, you know. Next on the list is Tsukune and Moka from the series Rosario plus Vampire. If you've never it's an anime, well, it's originally a manga, but obviously it's also an anime series as well. But basically it's a, you know, Tsukune and Moka have this very interesting relationship. Obviously they kind of hit it off from the beginning. Tsukune was like very infatuated with Moka, but Moka's infatuated with him too, because, you know, her being the vampire, him being a human, but also it's just like, he's the only person, like, she drinks his blood. It's actually kind of like this sweet thing. It's like a running gag a little bit between them. But there's like, I don't want to go into spoilers about their story, but their story is interesting because Moka actually has 2 different personalities. She has the pink-haired version of herself known as Outer Moka, and then her silver-haired self known as Inner Moka. And obviously, you know, if you've ever read Rosario plus Vampire, you know where Moka's story goes in that regard. And where it actually kind of ends up is actually a little bittersweet, but at the same time, it's actually super sweet, especially because Inner Moka was never the biggest fan of Tsukune, but as the series progressed, she actually started kind of like she's very like tsundere when it comes to Tsukune. So when it's all said and done, like, she definitely warms up to him in the later parts of the series. So it's not just outer Moka that has a thing for him, it's eventually inner Moka. And like I said, where that storyline goes, like I said, it's bittersweet, but at the same time, it's also kind of sweet in its own way too. But it's just like, they are so adorable, like, especially because like there's so many characters around Tsukune, they have a thing for him. But obviously, it's not like it's a bit of a like harem situation around Tsukune. But obviously, it's like, no, like the person he's always cared for. He cares about everyone around him, his friends. But it's like, there's always been this special thing between him and Moka, and him wanting to become strong so that he can't protect her, because she's always protected him, especially at the beginning when he was just a human at a monster school and didn't really have anyone to back him up. She was like the first one to kind of have his back, so he wanted to get stronger, so he could protect her. So it's one of those things where like I said, things kind of end with that series where it's kind of like you can definitely see the window open for, there definitely could be more story, but there isn't. I would love to see where their like actual relationship would take them going forward, like into like a season 3, because the manga's season 1 and a season 2. But regardless, tangents and all that, so that's why they're on my list. I think they're just super adorable. Next is once again another adorable couple. I keep saying that, but I should just say, like, every couple in this is actually adorable in their own right. Is Lucifer and Chloe from the show Lucifer. If you've never seen this series, Chloe and Lucifer have a very interesting relationship. And it's actually, I actually was thinking about this before I recorded this, that Lucifer and Chloe haven't spent that much time as a couple. We're currently in season 5A, but they have not spent a lot of time as a couple. It's only a little bit, just because things always kind of get in the way. But it's obviously like, Lucifer's always got his very like, flirty way of handling himself around her, but the way he's around Chloe is she makes him want to be a better version of himself, because obviously like him going through therapy and stuff like that is him, obviously he's got a lot of, father issues, and for him, especially it complicates things, because kind of spoilerish, that Chloe in his mind, it's like, oh, my dad set this up, my dad made her, so it's like any feelings Chloe might actually have for me, she doesn't really have them, this is all part of my dad's plan. So that's what I always put a little bit of a wrinkle in the relationship. And then spoilers again, when she found out about him really being Lucifer, even though he's always been honest about who he was, that kind of put some wrinkles in it. But it is still this beautiful thing of it's not the easiest relationship by any means, because there's always a roadblock in some shape or form, but they legitimately do love each other. It's just complications always arise, because Lucifer doesn't always know, like, he kind of does the opposite of what he should do. That's always a thing with him and Linda. But obviously season 5A showcases the fact is that Chloe can be just like that too. So it's like they pair well together. Like I said, their banter back and forth, but also just like how they're there for each other, how they care for each other's well-being in many different, aspects. And it's just, that's what makes them easily one of my favorite couples. Like I said, even though they've never had a lot of time as a couple, just that story of like their love story in its own right, being awesome. Next on my list is from the TV show Sense8. This is a very unique situation I've picked. I included Lito, Hernando, and Daniela. Now, this is obviously Lito and Hernando are like the main couple. I mean, because their situation it's a very hard, relationship, because Lito being like this well-known actor in Mexico, being gay, would kind of, it ends up affecting him over the course of the story. He loses a lot of opportunities. People are afraid to kind of, it's like, well, you've lied to us, but also like the people kind of turn their backs on you a little bit. And so that struggle of like, especially because he felt so insecure and hid it for so long, but then eventually, being very open enough with himself to be like, I'm gay and this is my boyfriend, this is the man that I love. I just thought that was a beautiful element to their story, just to see, to see Lito finally just being able to embrace who he is and embrace who he loves, having spent so long hiding it. And the reason why I add Danielle to that, because it's like, she is a part of that relationship. Obviously, it's like when she found out about Lito being gay, she was like, oh my God, this is amazing. She was actually the first person, like, she kind of found out on her own accidentally, but it ended up being a situation where she embraced it. She embraced that relationship. Especially because obviously Daniela was kind of going through her complicated situation with her abusive boyfriend. But it's like, it's really just Lito and Hernando. But I feel like Daniela is just as much a key component to this relationship, because it's like, it's almost a three-way relationship of love between significant others and friends. Like it meshes well together. So yes, it's mainly Lito and Hernando, which is beautiful and cute all in its own right, but there's also the Daniela element, which adds like this layer of, you know, because I think it adds that layer of acceptance of like, granted, yes, Daniela was kind of using it to, she's like, oh, I can be your, you know, I could basically be your beard, you know, but it's like she gave them an opportunity to be themselves and, you know, have someone else to kind of enjoy that with, instead of it just being the secret. It's like, oh, but we get to share it with someone, and it makes the whole thing work, and it's just beautiful in my opinion, that trio, you know. Next up on the list is Cheyrl and Toni from Riverdale. Now the reason why I think makes Cheyrl and Toni stand out, because obviously we know Cheyrl is not, you know, well, if you haven't seen Riverdale, but if you have seen Riverdale, you know how Cheyrl can be. I think Toni complements Cheyrl very nicely, because obviously it's like, because for Cheyrl, it's like, I'm top dog and I need someone ride or die by my side that's also like an alpha that's top dog as well. And she kind of has that, no, she definitely has that in Toni, because I feel like Toni is able to kind of, because for Cheyrl, she's kind of, obviously she's lost a lot. Like, her family is a mess. It's just a complicated relationship she has with her mom, everything with her dad, losing Jason. Jason was always that person that kept her, I think, a little bit more even killed her. I mean, granted, we never actually got to see too many instances of their relationship, because granted, at the beginning of the series, Jason died, but we never got those moments between them. But you almost get the feeling like Toni kind of fills that void to a certain extent, because I feel like Jason's the only other person that could ever balance out Cheyrl, but also Toni doesn't try to restrict Cheyrl. She just lets Cheyrl be Cheyrl, and it's like, yo, if you got a problem with Cheyrl being Cheyrl, you got a problem with me. And it's like I said, like, Toni's like really ride or die like that, and I think that's what makes their relationship like so awesome. I mean, granted, currently, spoilers, but not really spoilers, they're going through a little bit of a rough patch. It's more so an outside issue that's causing the problem. It's not really them, but, you know, I think they'll make it over the hump, hopefully, you know, because I think they work so well together. Because, I mean, like I said, not just the fact is that Jason kept her, even killed her. I think Toni's the first person she's really been in love with. Because especially, I think, you know, Cheyrl kind of struggled with her own sexuality. Like, obviously, like, that ended up being a story point. Like, obviously, like, her, I believe it was her mom that was kind of, or at least there was a whole, I think Cheyrl had mentioned, like, that had come up before, that her being into a girl, and that was kind of quickly shut down by her mom, I believe. So I think this is her first opportunity to really just kind of fully be herself with someone, because she always kind of puts people at a distance. Once again, just her personality and everything, she could be a lot, but like I said, I think Toni like balances that out very nicely, so that's why I included them on my list. Next on the list is Joe and Love from the series You. This is probably the most like, maybe not, I guess controversial would be the name of it, but it's like, this is also going to be entering spoiler territory, so if you've not seen You, I'm sorry, but I'm about to kind of spoil something. But the reason why, you know, obviously we know Joe is the stalker that he is. He becomes obsessed, and it's like, oh, like, I'm so in love with you, and he orchestrates and manipulates so much to get with someone. But what makes this relationship unique, obviously what separates this from the Beck situation, because you thought like, oh my God, it's a repeat of the Beck situation. Maybe to a certain extent, a repeat of the Candace situation, but you're thinking like, oh, you have this all figured out. And to me, the twist in season 2 where it's like, she's kind of just as messed up as Joe, you're like, oh, that in some twisted way, there is some true form of love here that, you know, love does, you know, Love accepts him for who he is, and it's like she can be just like him. So they're from an outside perspective, you're like, oh, they're kind of an odd couple, because you're like, oh, I mean, they kill and do whatever they want to ensure their love and connection with the other person. Because Love kind of makes it seem like, you know, when it gets revealed, like, oh, it's not like, oh, Joe, she wasn't caught in Joe's trap. Joe was caught in her trap, you know. So that's why I'm like, they're kind of like two peas in a pod type of situation. So like I said, it just makes the relationship very unique, because it's such a twist in the story when it's revealed, like, her, you know, that she's a lot more like Joe than you would think she is, and especially where that ends them up, where they end up at season 2, at the end of season 2. Then I'm like, I'm actually really interested to see where the story goes in season 3. That I'm like, yes, it's It's similar to James and Alisa, who I had on a previous video from the end of the effing world. It's kind of like there's a sweet and beautifulness to it in a very fucked up way. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm like, it's a little bit of a controversial relationship to kind of put up there, because it's like, you could say that's a toxic relationship, but at the same time, like, but there's actually like, they found kinship in that twisted toxicity in a certain sense. I mean, in their minds, it's probably not. Well, at one point, Joe was kind of looking at love a certain way, but then it was kind of like, oh, you know, they kind of worked through that rough patch. They're even having a kid and everything together. So once again, I'm really interested to see where the relationship goes in season 3. I'm very excited to see how that new dynamic changes, because we've just been following Joe. For Joe to have someone very much like him, that's definitely going to be interesting. And finally on my list for this video will be Harley and Ivy from the Harley Quinn, the animated series. To me, I mean, I had a friend point this out. I didn't really recognize the Harley and Ivy situation, but to me, that ended up being a very interesting relationship, because obviously Ivy is Harley's best friend, especially like Ivy was there when Harley got dumped by the Joker, like the fallout from that, you know, wanting to do her villainy thing. Obviously Ivy was like, I'm not about to get all mixed up in that, but she does for Harley's sake, you know? And just to see the roller coaster where their relationship is, like the whole like hooking up randomly, and then it's like the kissing, and it's like, whoa, we got to deny that, but then like hooking up multiple times, it's like, no, we can't do this, I'm getting married to Kite Man. So it is this sweet, like, especially because you can make the argument like Harley doesn't know what a normal relationship is like, considering like the circumstances of her and the Joker being together, and even that being something she had to come to terms with, you know, in season 2. And that kind of played its way, because, you know, Ivy was reluctant because it's like, I don't want to get hurt by you, you know, and that's, you know, Ivy's trying to protect herself, which you kind of understand, but it's sad because like you see Harley put herself out there. She doesn't really put herself out there a lot. I mean, to a certain extent, it's Harley's show. She's going to, because Harley does her thing, but it's also like, on an intimate level like this, like I said, like outside of the Joker relationship, we've never really seen her like have one. So for that spark between her and Ivy, kind of like the runaway bride situation at the end of season 2. Spoilers, sorry, I should have said that earlier, but it's like, it's really sweet. It's very like, I even said it at the time, very Thelma and Louise at the very end of season 2. And it's like, you know, gets you excited to see, you know, what this new dynamic looks like for them going forward into season 3. Like, hey, we're going to be like the power couple. It used to be like, oh, Harley and Joker, the power couple. It's like, nah, now it's Harley and Ivy, which I think that's been a thing in the comic books. I think that's why it also caught me off guard, because I didn't know that was ever a thing, but I think it's a thing in the comic books. I think they have been more than just friends, that they have gotten together in the comic books as well, I think. Like I said, not well versed in the comics, but still. The whole reason thing I was bringing up too is like, I had a friend who kind of saw it coming, but I didn't. I think sometimes when it comes to relationships and shows and stuff, I can be a bit of a believer. They said like, oh, I didn't realize that is where that was heading until they made it a lot more bluntly obvious about how Harley felt. I was like, oh, we're setting this up, but obviously, you know, it complicated things because of the whole Kite Man thing. But I think, yeah, it's like Kite Man and Ivy were cute, but it's like you're more like team Harvey? Is that what they're... I'm sure they probably already have a ship name, but that's just me throwing one off at the top of my head. But regardless, you know, I think they make a very interesting couple. Like, obviously, Ivy being kind of the more calm, collected side of the couple, and then you have Harley being the legitimate wild card that she is. So I'm sure, like I said, that played a part in why Ivy was so protective of her own heart in the situation, and not wanting to get hurt, and not wanting to, you know, potentially lose a friend, you know, because if things didn't work out, it's like she would also be losing her best friend. You know? And so that brings this video to an end. I really enjoyed making this more of an annual thing. If you're unaware, I'm a sucker for a good love story and romance. That I get like, oh, I fawn over couples. I'm like, oh, they're so adorable, that's so cute, that's so beautiful. So, you know, I really enjoy just taking this opportunity to just kind of gush about like the romances that I'm like. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.